everyone, and welcome to the Mills podcast and YouTube channel. We are currently doing a series called 10 Questions with the Mills, where we get to know our Mills community better through asking each of our guests 10 questions about themselves. Today, we have none other than the wonderful, amazing Sara here today to talk with us a little bit and answer these 10 questions. Hi, Sara.
Hello, Lapani Tani.
How are you doing today?
It's been a full day, but it's also been good. I did take some time for a writing date with a friend that I write with. And so I got a little bit of me time to do some reflection and checking in with myself. So that's good. It's a good way to start the day.
Again, this is Sara. Sara's with us today to answer the 10 questions. Sara, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yes. My name is Sara Ann Reimers Carpenter Clark. I have 5 names, which is very unusual for a white Midwestern woman. I call St. Louis, Missouri home, but I also grew up in Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri in a very rural area, a town of 1,000 people. So I had that. My first experience of crossing cultures was moving from a city to the country. And ever since then, I've been looking for ways that I can cross cultures, because I feel like every time I do that, I learn more about myself and the world. So I have an awesome position at Mills for doing that exact thing. I am the Intercultural Education Coordinator at the Mills. But what that means in practice is we have about 25 student employees, and a large part of my work is hiring, training, supporting them, and they run the Mills. So it's my boss, Sonia, and I full-time, and then the student staff. So it's like part of my job, a large part of my job is just making sure that we are staying out of their way and they have the tools that they need to run the place.
That is amazing. I didn't know a lot of those things about you. Thank you for sharing those. And thank you again for being here today with us. Without further ado, I will get to our 10 questions. First question, what is one thing you do for self-care?
Move my body. So in the middle of the day, if I am feeling sluggish, overwhelmed, if I just take a 15-minute break and walk around the block, I'm way better of a human. I love moving my body. So whether it's dance, or I used to play soccer a lot before COVID, or yoga, or whatever workout class, I really enjoy some sort of doing that with another person. I'm not very good at moving my body just by myself, but I'm good at finding ways to move my body with other people. That's one thing that I do to just take care of myself and make sure, kind of hit a reset button and make sure I'm doing all right in the day.
Imagine yourself in 3 years. What do you hope will be different about you then compared to now?
Well, I'm just going to dive in there and say, I hope in 3 years, I am more comfortable with my own anger, more able to feel it, tap into it, and be with it, and then even potentially express it when it needs to get expressed, however that might be, in healthy ways. And I would also say maybe identifying some of my own needs better. I've been very much, whether it's my socialization or personality and the kind of combination between those, I'm very attuned to other people's needs and kind of accommodating and agreeing and taking care of others. And it's been a journey for me to practice staying in touch with what my needs are and then requesting for them to be met when I need them to. So that's something I would like to see different in 3 years. It's kind of funny for someone to be like, in 3 years, I hope to be angrier or more angry. Maybe, but less perfectionistic. I continue to work on that one as well. I happen to be listening to Audre Lorde right now, and she has an essay about anger and the uses of anger and how important it is to like work with it. And for white folks in particular, for us, that we're dangerous when we're angry. Like we need to be able to like feel our feels and express them in healthy ways so that they don't come out in ways that harm other people. And that may be true for everyone, but she has a kind of lens on it, talking about how this shows up in interracial relationships and experiences between Black women and white women in particular.
And this is Audre Lorde. Is it a book or is it a podcast?
Yeah, it's a book. I'm listening to it on audiobook. So I love the Libby app. Go get, if you live in somewhere served by a public library, go get your public library card. So the UO library card's not enough. That's great to have, but go get your public library card, generally free. And this one is called Sister Outsider, Essays and Speeches by Audre Lorde. So each one, there's nice little just like chunks that you can like skip around and like, you know, what is resonating? What do you need today? So I'm still listening to the one about anger. So really I shouldn't be trying to quote Audre Lorde yet because I'm still in it. But you know, people have been writing and talking about this and we don't need to be so scared of it.
What is your favorite song at the moment?
That would be the song River by Ibeyi. And so they are a Afro-French Cuban set of twins, like they're two sisters that are performers. And wow, their work is really powerful generally and just beautiful. And this song, it just feels healing. And it's mostly in English, and the outro's in Yoruba, which is a West African language that's of their ancestors who were brought to Cuba as slaves. And the music video is pretty simple, but powerful and just entrancing. And I looked it up recently to be like, okay, what are they talking about in their lyrics? Is this like, I don't know, religious or something that I don't know, or like what's the scoop? And it is about healing, and it's about a Yoruba goddess and being a protector and healing the sick and taking care of people. And they did an amazing job. Like I feel that as I listen to it. So if I'm having a bad day, like you can just like put that on and it's like, yes, waters like wash this away.
When was the first time you heard it?
Oh, thank you for asking. So I was introduced to them by a Mills staff member, Matias Bervejillo, and he was like, Sarah, I think you would like these, like these folks. And I was like, checked it out. So I don't know, that was years ago. He graduated a while back. But that's one of the awesome parts of the Mills is that the student staff choose the music at the front desk. And so you get to hear like all sorts of stuff and get to be introduced to artists that you didn't know. So thanks to the Mills.
What is one thing in your life that you are very proud of?
So pride's a funny thing. I was talking about this the other day with my mom. Like, what does it mean to be proud of someone or of yourself? And does it imply that you did something unexpected and you had like lower expectations and then surpassed them? Or is it just something that's like, it's just like, it's awesome regardless, like maybe it's not related to the expectations. So I don't know. I feel I'm proud of having moved to Nicaragua by myself in my early 30s, leaving my husband of 10 years in Eugene and going with essentially without a plan and moving for 1 year, taking a 1 year break from my work, which is something I'd wanted to do. I'd wanted to move abroad for 10 years and kept applying to scholarships and not getting them. And finally, we just saved up enough money and figured out a way that I could do it where we could afford it. And he finished his PhD and it was my turn. And I had did a big turn. I was like, all right, bye, I'm leaving on a jet plane. So it was a phenomenal experience. Good, bad, hard, beautiful. And I'm glad I did it.
That's a big move. That's bravery. That is like being able to put yourself out there and like learn a lot. what do you think this experience, or what did this experience mean to you? And what do you think is like maybe one takeaway?
I am taking away now, after having some space and reflecting more on it, the big takeaway is that it's not my accomplishment alone, that I didn't take that risk by myself. I was supported by a community that some was the community I was leaving who supported me in doing it. The Mills for letting me go, like a boss who approved that, a husband who's like, yep, you've been wanting to do this for a decade, go ahead, we'll figure this out. But then landing there, and all the Nicaraguans that I built community with, the host family I stayed with, and the women that I worked with, as we opened up a queer-friendly bar cafe together, kind of a cooperative cafe bar. All of those folks took a risk by letting me in, because like gringos abroad, there is the good, the bad, and the ugly, and they didn't know which I was. Right, I was essentially a stranger at the beginning, and little by little, them taking risks and letting me in, and us establishing relationships. Like, that's why it feels weird to me to say that I'm proud of that year. I am proud of that experience, but it's not my pride alone, or a pride of just myself, because I didn't do it by myself.
That like community aspect and like learning sounds like a really big thing for you with this experience.
Yeah, it shifted me to be a little more collective. I mean, the dominant US culture is really individualistic, and the individual is the smallest unit that you give a crap about. And, being in a more collective society, and being in specifically a tight feminist community, it provided some frame shifting and a little bit more space, and a little bit more of shifting into that collective norm.
What inspired you or made you want to, because you said you'd waited like a decade to go, what made you want to go in the first place? And then like, why did it take you 10 years?
So my first time going abroad, I was 18, and I went to Peru for 2 weeks with a group. And that gave me a taste like, ooh, I liked that. That was an interesting experience. Okay. So then I went for a summer to Spain, and it was with a Spanish school. And then I was like, wait a minute, why am I learning Spanish in Spain? That's not what's spoken in the United States. There's way more people from Latin America, Mexico, and they speak a different type of Spanish. So then I went to Mexico for a semester. So like I kept like doing these kind of just a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, like longer experience. And when I left Mexico, which by the way is where I met my husband on the study abroad trip my senior year of college, and that's a whole story of its own. So yeah, we met while we were living abroad, and I left Mexico and knew like, a semester was not enough. I should have done a year. I want to do a year. And so like immediately, like, how do I get abroad for a year? And I ended up doing a master's, and I was able to live in Costa Rica for 3 months. And I've, lived in different regions of the United States for different lengths of time. But I had in my mind, I really wanted that full shift of living in a different country context for a year. And so I just kept trying to find a way that I could afford it. Like that costs money. You have to, you at least have to have airfare. And I like a little bit more of a cushion to know that I'm not gonna starve. So I just kept trying to figure out ways I could financially afford it. And it took 10 years to get to that place where I could do it. I mean, there's ways to do it cheaper, and like anybody that wants to have a conversation with me, we can have a whole conversation about how to get abroad as affordable and ethically as possible, which is a big deal to me. There's ways that you can go cheap but are harmful to local communities. So how do you do it so that it's good, fair, as ethical as you can be, and as affordable as you can be? And it took 10 years for me to be able to do that.
What's one thing or person that motivates you?
One thing that motivates me is learning. I love learning. So if it's a new experience, I'm open to new experiences, but in particular, it's like what personal growth is one of my top values. Connection and growth are those top two values for me. And so if there's an opportunity to push myself, I am motivated if I feel like there's going to be some learning or growth that comes out of it. And that could be anything, like learning to be bad at things is still learning.
As Sonia would say, how interesting. Or wait, no. Who brought that up? Shuhao, yes.
How fascinating.
How fascinating.
He got it from a video, so Shuhao watched. Shuhao is really interested in learning and growth too. He's super curious already, but he had watched a video about like, what do you do with mistakes? And the response being, how do you reframe when you make a mistake? How fascinating, which is an example of that. I mentioned earlier, anger being a focusing emotion, something that hones you in. And then I mentioned kind of opening, more expansive emotions. Curiosity is one of those. So when you make a mistake, instead of focusing in on shame or something, if you can switch into that more open kind of mindset of like how fascinating puts you there. Like it's a little bit more curiosity, there's a little bit more space that you can then take a breath and make a kind of decision of where you're going to go next. And hopefully not get stuck in shame.
Yeah, shame is a big thing. And if you can stay engaged in the conversation instead of, like you said, being ashamed and like disconnecting, I feel like it brings more in. So shout out to Shuhao. What do you want to do in 10 years?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I could be anywhere in the world, which is actually pretty freaking awesome for me. Like I'm happy with that response. I'm 37 years old. I'm married. I'm not having kids. We don't own a house. Who knows? We both like to travel. We both like new experiences. I have no idea. I will say that within the next 10 years, I'm actually going to set the goal lower. In 3 years, if I haven't gone skydiving by the time I'm 40, that I'm doing it on my 40th birthday.
What is one thing that you're good at?
Well, my planned response to this one was to tell you that I've been told I'm pretty good at balancing task and relationship. So particularly in our work, in life, this is a constant tension. And again, that US dominant norm is about task focus. And it can be really unhealthy. Like it can get things done, but like at what cost? And so how do you balance that and bring in more of this learning from other communities, other ways of being that is much more in relationship, much more connected? And you can't just do that, generally speaking, and still get paid. I don't know, maybe if somebody has that job, let me know. You don't have to do anything, you just get to connect. But trying to find that balance where we can do both. And really it's through the good relationships that you get things done. In my view and Sonia's view at the Mills, that's what we prioritize, but it's kind of that dance. Another response to that question of something I'm good at is I have a lot of songs in my head. I may not know all the lyrics to them or the correct lyrics to them, but there's a lot of snippets of songs in my head. And I do a lot of association of like, you say something and then my brain goes into the song and just like belt out the song. So I've actually done that like 2 or 3 times in this interview. I don't know if all of those will make the cut, but it's something that just like happens and is fun. And like it's just a little silliness for the day.
What did you want to be when you were younger?
So I've just spent the last 9 months on my own kind of study abroad trip, living with my parents for the first time in 18 years, which has felt like re-entering this culture of origin that I came from, but that I've been away from for so long. So I happen to be here today still. This is my last day with them. And I asked them what I wanted to be when I was younger. And they have no idea. Like, I don't know, Sarah. Mom tried to look it up in like a scrapbook or something, and like, nope, we don't know. So the best answer I can give you, because I don't remember, my first memory of like wanting to be something when I'm older was probably as a teenager. I really liked public speaking, and I attended like a bunch of motivation, like there were always motivational speakers around. And I imagined that like my second or third career, so I thought I needed to wait to be wise, like have something important to say, but that a future career would be as a motivational speaker. And when I went to kind of a youth rally thing, there were 10,000 people in a stadium, and there was a speaker in the front, and people were like into it. We were like all like with the speaker. There was an energy in the room. I was like, oh, that would be amazing. I want to be on stage. Which I don't know, maybe there's some ego involved there or just a rush from the energy. But I know that a lot of people don't like public speaking, and I really enjoy it.
If you could give your 10-year-old self advice, what would you say? And what do you think your younger self would say back to you?
I don't think I would even try with my 10-year-old self. One, I don't really remember her that well, honestly. Like she's kind of fuzzy in my brain, and I can't really imagine her taking any advice from me. So, but if I could talk to my 20-year-old self, she was a bit more interested in advice, and maybe she might have listened, because at that age I was getting a lot of advice from my older sisters and filtering that in. I would tell her to use therapy. Like, go to therapy. Like, if you enjoy learning and you want to be your best self and you want to have healthy relationships, like, our society has toxic crap built into it. And so there doesn't have to be anything like terribly wrong with you. You don't have to be broken. You don't have to be breaking down to benefit from guided self-reflection with a professional who can help you see your patterns and habits and which ones aren't serving me, and try to imagine new ways of being. I think it adds more, for me, it has added a lot more flexibility and adaptability and a lot more growth. I don't know why I didn't start sooner. I know why I didn't, because society told me that there has to be like something wrong, terrible. And so like I would go for like a problem and solve the problem and then head out. And it's like, no, there is some richness to unlearning things, all the things.
What do you think your 20-year-old self would say back to you? You said the 10-year-old you would probably not listen or take that advice. What do you think the 20-year-old self would say?
I could imagine her either like dipping in and using like the college counseling services that like it was free, like why not kind of thing. I could imagine her checking that out. Or I could imagine it planting a seed where she'd be like, okay, yeah, I hear you. But I got a lot, as I said, so I have 4 older sisters and they were giving me plenty of advice. And I was used to receiving it and then kind of sifting through and deciding what I wanted to do, or taking some of it, leaving some of it. So I probably would have just sifted that into that kind of stream of advice and then decided. But even the advice you don't take in the moment, I think can plant seeds that then might have grown into something more.
So last but not least, we have our 10th question. And the question is, What is the best advice you've ever been given? And what impact would you say it had on you?
I have a silly response and a serious response. A silly response, I mean, it's still true. One of my sisters told me, don't give your credit card to your fiance. He had charged a bunch of stuff, including her engagement ring, on her credit card. And she finally saw the writing on the wall and kicked him to the curb. But then she was left with all this debt that then affected her like future years of getting out from under this debt because it was in her name. And that was really crappy. So that was helpful advice. Maybe a more serious, like, I don't know if that was the best advice ever, but it was very helpful. It's one of those things that I actually like listened to my older sister on. But my thesis advisor, Dr. Kristen Yaris, she is an international studies, now global studies professor at UO. That's where I did my master's. She did research in Nicaragua when I was looking at moving down and trying to figure out like what I was going to do. And, you know, I had looked at some jobs and there were some volunteer opportunities, looking at organizations. She told me, don't commit to anything till you're down there. Wait, you don't have to commit right now. Wait till you get down there, talk to the organizations, talk to the people, see what is a fit and what feels right, and then do that. So for someone who I'm very trained as a planner, like I like to plan for the future, I like to kind of plan things out. It was pretty radical for me to move for a year with the only plan I had was to live with a host family for the first 2 months. Now, I was equipped with skills because I had lived abroad before, like it wasn't like terrifying, but it was a radical shift for me to actually follow through on not having a plan. So she gave me, it was like a permission slip, really, of like, here, Sarah, here's your permission slip to not plan things and see what happens. Which was awesome. And I followed her advice. And then like, I never could have predicted the journey that followed because I had not committed. There's no way that I could have possibly created in my mind that I was going to open up this, you know, cooperative Nicaraguan feminist queer bar. Like that just, you can't make that stuff up. So yeah. And the relationships that developed from that and the learning from that experience were and are still profound.
Those were our 10 questions. Thank you, Sarah, so much for being here today. I feel like so much of what you said has so much richness and like stuff we can learn from. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for being so open. Thank you for sharing your stories and appreciate your time. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Lofani Tani. I have never been on a podcast before, and I think this is really funny because it's kind of sneaky public speaking or something. Like I feel like I'm having a conversation with you one-on-one. So I'm just telling you these things about my life. And I'm cool with people knowing them. I didn't share anything that like people can't know. But it's funny knowing that it's going out to a wider audience or that it's going to be out in the world. And like, when normally, again, that perfectionist self of mine that I was kind of trained in was you would plan everything you say and you would say it properly. And this was more just a flowing conversation, but it's going to be out in the world. So thank you for bringing me into the 21st century.
I'm glad that you're in this podcast. And I'm pretty sure everybody else in the community is glad to hear you. Thank you for tuning in for our 10 questions with the Mills. Don't forget to subscribe to the Mills YouTube channel and podcast for more content. Also check us out on social media at the Mills, which is also linked below in the description. Take care.